I recently started watching the new release Chinese anime To Be Hero X, and I loved it so much. This is nice. He has a doomed yaoi relationship with a black hair villain, and when I saw this guy dancing ballet, I have to draw him. And I thought since I cooked with this piece, I will walk you through my process after learning from Chinese artists. I started sketching the overall anatomy and just figuring out what I want to do to show the elegant, flowy, ethereal look of nice. I know I wanted a pose that looked like a dancer and with a lot of curvature. If you can see the green line, I drew it in because I want to check if Nice's spine actually matches with the line, and check if there are any spots needed to be fixed to ground the character instead of having the character tipping over to one side. I also compared the spine line to decide which direction the cape should flow towards. If they are flowing in a parallel direction to the spine, there wouldn't be that much variation and also making the character unbalanced. Usually I would go for a color sketch to get the overall feeling of the atmosphere and lighting I will be working towards before I actually dedicate to it. I would also recommend doing this if you're looking to become an artist taking commissions. Then you can actually give the color sketch to your client to better discuss changes before rendering. Another thing I am starting to practice is to decide whether the background is the main focus or the character. For this piece, I am clearly doing a character illustration, which the main focus should be nice. So going for a simple background is not a bad artist problem, but actually a good artistic decision. If you want the environment to be the focus, then vice versa. The character shouldn't be rendered with all the detail. On top of that, a major shading technique you can see here is used by many Asian artists, which is 通透感, transparency. It is mainly used to show that there is space between elements through contrast. If you want a more in-depth look on how I use this technique, comment down below and I'll make an in-depth tutorial about it maybe next week. So subscribe to engage more with art content and animatics. After I am satisfied with the atmosphere, I lower the transparency and start the line art. I normally leave the clothing patterns out of the line art and paint them in with coloring to reduce the focus on the patterns and prevent the patterns taking the attention away from the main shape. Just think if you want something to stand out, include them in the line art. If not, then leave it up. Next is the grayscale. The main step in my illustration process is the grayscale, and it does 70% of my rendering work. In this illustration, it wasn't the best example, but as a beginner learning grayscale, you should most definitely start with the gray color and have multiply layered clipping on top, not a blue-gray color like what I'm doing here. I usually go with the initial color of the base and draw in the multiply layer on top to apply the shadow area. I first use a hard edge and one color to block out the very basic layer of shadow. Rule of thumb in this stage, don't think about secondary shadows, just focus on painting out where it would be dark. In my case, I separated the clothing folds with the initial shadows of the bigger shapes because the darkest point should be in the center and that's where the folds are, so I reserved another multiply layer I will add later on for the folds, so I just shaded the overall shape of the body. And if you did a wrong stroke, just erase with the hard edge or airbrush depending on the reflectivity of the object or if it should have a glow effect. The next step is to add color dodge layer on top to start working out the light areas, or you can just use white to mark them out. Remember not to airbrush everything. Keep in mind if the item has a high reflective point like the chest plate I'm drawing here, or a softer, less reflective object like the cape fabric, there is still light going through all of them, but depending on material, you should either use a hard edge brush or a soft airbrush to create the effect. After that, you can start another multiply layer if necessary to add the secondary shadows, or in my case, the folds that appear in the shadow parts of the character. Reminder to everyone, don't add things that are not required. This secondary shadow is not required if there are no overlapping elements in the shadow areas. So now we have a grayscale rendering of the character, but when you add the base color below the multiply layers, it looks muddy and the shadows are ugly. What do? You can color the shadows with an airbrush or a hard edge by turning on an overlay or color layer on top. The differences between these two layer modes is mainly between if you want high saturation, then go for overlay layer. That way you can actually adjust accordingly in the overlay layer and see how it works out with the current grayscale you have. Or if you want a dull colored grayscale, then just turn on color layer on top. For this piece, I want the atmosphere to be ethereal but with an eerie dark vibe, so I use the color layer to go over the grayscale colors. Try to limit the color used to one warm color and one cool color, and match the color as close to the object color as you can. And surprise surprise, it already looks like a half rendered piece. Next up is the base color. I just filled in the base color afterwards, but you can do it after or before coloring the grayscale, it doesn't matter. A thing I always add to show the transparency or light volume of the hair is to adjust the penetration of light. In general, there would be less dense hair in front of your face, so merging the skin color with the hair or the bang areas can show this effect very well. After all the base color, you can see that the piece looks 90% complete. From this point, I will use the add layer to go into the details and define the shape of the hair and chest plate, etc. with the light coming from the back because I have a strong, hard backlight. I chose the color of the light to be, for example, in my case, yellow to paint on the add layer. And when I blend or airbrush erase it, it will actually leave out some of the yellow color before blending it softly with the bright white color of the light. Since I wanted the head to be the main focus, so I used a multiply layer to add heavier contrast and shape the hair more with the shadows this time. And you can see I always keep a gray colored saturation layer on the top of all the layers. So if I turn it on, I can always check if the colors I use change the contrast or the grayscale. Then I added the environmental bounce light using a normal layer and painted the final details with the same layer to add more reflective color variations, for example on chest plate with a higher saturated brown orange and the actual pattern on the outfit. The very last step is to actually draw in the background. I drew in the dying falling birds and paying attention if the birds are taking too much away from the main focus. You can see initially I drew in a lot of birds and feathers on the cape, but at the end of the day I erased most of it, as the cape and the lower body is less of a focus than the main emotion expressed on the face. I also adjusted the lighting of the birds from pure black to a lighter color because even if the lighting is strong from the back, the shadow would not be that strong to be able to turn the stuff into a black color, and at the end of the day it just takes the focus away from the already shadowed main character nice. After all of that, I adjusted the entire piece with a color dodge layer to bring out the saturated glow of certain elements, coloring the line art to soften the black line art, some sparkle particles, and finally play with some curves to strengthen the highlights and shadows, and we are done. If you have stayed through the speed paint, thank you so much, and also thank you for the 200 subscribers. You enjoying the animatics and art content means so much to me. If you like these digital art content in between the animatics because they take so long to make, please do let me know. Remember to subscribe and like and comment what you think. I do read every single comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!